It's a tale of two teams. The Golden State Warriors shake up their lineup twice this weekend. The Nuggets lose to the miserable Wizards and beat the streaking Hawks. Matt Moore and Wes Goldberg are here to help us all figure out what is real. That's all ahead today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your shot clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore, and subbing in for Hayes today from the Locked On Heat podcast and Locked On NBA Game Time, it's Wes Goldberg. Wes, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Excited to do this.
We've got a lot to talk about. The Warriors shocked everyone when they announced that Jonathan Kuminga would be starting in place of Draymond Green, but the shock didn't last long as an injury to Andrew Wiggins forced both Kuminga and Draymond into the lineup together. Here's Locked On Warriors with how the Warriors should move forward from here.
Small lineup is clearly the most effective lineup. You know, it's just a question of the risk of using it and the wear and tear you have on Draymond. I would like to see them. I know this sounds silly. I would like to see them throw Kuminga on some centers. They got to figure out a way to keep Kuminga and Draymond on the floor together. And I think the way to do that is to not play a center. And
the way to do that is to go make a mid-season trade and maybe for once in our lives start talking about a big man.
It has to be a very specific one to fit, though. He's got to be able to run with the Warriors. He's got to be able to pass the ball with the Warriors. And honestly, if he can't shoot, there's no point.
Okay, Wes, you're the guest, so let's start with you. Did you like the Kuminga for Draymond swap? And how did you feel about the Kuminga-Draymond combo actually securing the win over the Wolves?
I like the swap a lot. It's actually something we brought up on Locked On NBA Game Night maybe last week was, hey, if you're trying to play Jonathan Kuminga and get him in space, but you're also kind of adamant about, hey, we got to play a center next to Draymond Green because we just can't start games in December with Draymond at center, then I said, why don't you bring Draymond Green off the bench? Maybe he can sort of age into this Andre Iguodala type role. And, you know, it was funny, like a few nights later, that's exactly what happened. And then you see them go super small with Draymond at center against the Utah Jazz. They've always liked that Draymond versus Rudy Gobert matchup, and it worked in that game on Sunday. They outscored the Jazz by 12 points in Rudy Gobert's minutes, and that was in large part because Draymond Green was playing the five, and they were able to space him out and basically do the thing to Gobert that they've done over this last basically decade to Rudy Gobert. And so Steve Kerr has been messing around with his starting five, kind of trying different combinations and different lineups, and so maybe some nights it'll be Draymond and Kuminga at the 4 and the 5. Maybe other nights it'll just be Kuminga at the 4 with Kevon Looney at the 5 or Trace Jackson Davis if he can work his way back into the rotation at the 5. But for now, yeah, I think Draymond coming off the bench and then finding minutes at the end of quarters, at the end of halves for Draymond and Kuminga to be on the floor together when the Warriors typically do want to go small with Draymond at the 5, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, broad paintbrush of me just hating everything about what Wes just said. I love Wes. Wes is great. I hated this. So let's start here. So Rudy Gobert is minus 12 last night, right? So surely that small ball lineup is what works, and that's what Locked On Warriors is saying. Nope. Kuminga, Draymond last night, plus minus 0. Played him even. You want to know who won the minutes? Looney and Draymond. That's what worked. I hate putting Kuminga in the starting lineup. You know what? I was at the Warriors-Nuggets game, and Gary Payton was talking about how important it is to get Kuminga downhill. He's a north-south player. So when you put Kuminga on the floor, you are playing north-south basketball. Do you know who doesn't play north-south basketball? The Warriors. Like, all of this to me is transparently, let's get his trade value up because we're tired of dealing with him and his agent. Like, that's what this screams to me. That's not reporting. That's me speculating, but that's what this feels like. And it's like, you got to solve it. So, okay, all right, we'll placate him and we'll move him back into the starting lineup and we'll move Draymond to the bench, trying to keep everybody happy. Draymond and Steph are killing teams this year again. It's the same as it ever has been. Draymond and Steph together are dominant. There's no reason to break up that pairing. You're making Draymond worse and you're making Steph slightly worse. There's nothing about this that works, despite this win versus the Wolves in a revenge game on Sunday night after a loss the other night.
Wes, do you buy Matt's theory there that this is more about, rising trade value for Kuminga than it is about actual basketball strategy?
Yes. And Matt's saying he hates everything about it. What's wrong with any of that? Get Kuminga's value up. Let's go, baby. Let that Bronco buck, get him out there, show people what he can do, because you're right. It's not a basketball fit. It's why I never liked them drafting Kuminga in the first place. It was never going to work with his skill set on this Warriors basketball team. Steph Curry is maybe the best teammate in the league. He's hard to play with because he just changes all the patterns of the game. Right. You got to have a very specific player to play next to Steph. And Kuminga was just never going to be that. And that's why he's shown flashes. He's not where a lot of Warriors fans had hoped he would be at this stage in his career. And that's some on him and it's some on the system and the fact that it's never been a good fit. So get his trade value up, because I do think he could be a good fit somewhere else. This is the worst team for Kuminga to play on. I don't know that you could find a worse team in the league for Kuminga than the Golden State Warriors, but he's a good player and he's got a ton of talent. So play him in this lineup for now. And everything, like, you don't think Draymond knows all of this? Draymond's second on the team in plus minus, all this stuff. You're absolutely right. You need him and Steph on the court as much as possible together if you want to win high leverage basketball games. But also you kind of need to upgrade this roster too before the February trade deadline. So get Kuminga, showcase him now and say, yeah, you know what? He's not really right for us, but here's sort of what he might look like for you if you give us a bunch of stuff and help us kind of make this next step.
I'm fine with a long-term view on it. I think Wes is right about it. There's some great points about his fit on this team. It's just like acting like this is some sort of like, this is going to, we're on like iteration 7 this season with the Warriors of, no, this is going to do it, which is weird. Their record's really good, but this team knows that it's not working and they got to do something, which is why they keep throwing stuff out and throwing it against the wall.
Speaking of throwing stuff out, Locked On Warriors threw out a trade idea, and let's take a listen to that trade idea.
I brought up my Myles Turner trade, who can shoot, by the way. I brought it up to a Pacers fan, and I said, we'll give you, who did I say? I said, we'll give you a first rounder, a second rounder, expiring contracts of Peyton. I think I threw in maybe Moses Moody in there. And then gave Melton's expiring contract and gave him maybe 2 firsts and a second, or just a first and a second. He said, take him. He stinks. So that's how they feel about him in Indiana, I guess.
Really? 22 games this season in 32 minutes. He's a 48% field goal shooter, a 40% three-point shooter, 15.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 2 blocks. If that's sucking, I'll take it. If I'm Myles Turner, he's 28 years old. Clearly, this version of the Pacers is not incredible, right? Maybe everybody benefits from him moving on. Are they going to want to pay him big money at the end of the year? Is he going to have the best opportunity to put his skills on display to get big money from somewhere else in Indiana? I don't know. With every Pacers loss, particularly to a team that stinks as much as the Hornets, I think that becomes slightly more realistic, and it's something I'd be interested in.
Okay, Matt, are you interested in that idea, a little Myles Turner swap to the Warriors? Does that fix anything?
I mean, it does. Is Charlie is the Pacers fan just like a puppet with a Pacers jersey on that he's talking to? That's just like, oh, yeah, I would love to give you all of our, please give us all your trash and we'll give you Myles Turner. What is this? What is this? Like, no, Myles Turner is pivotal to the Pacers. They didn't trade him for like 5 years. He's one of the best stretch bigs in the league. He's one of the best stretch bigs in the league. He's also one of the only guys on that squad that can defend. You think you're getting him for a first, a second, and DeAnthony Melton, who's out for the season, is expiring? You throw Kuminga in there, maybe we can talk about it. I don't love the fit with Pascal Siakam, but maybe you might be able to figure out something. But that's the starting point here. Yes, but the Warriors, I guess, are just now becoming the Lakers, where it's like, hey, we'll give you garbage, and then you give us one of your 3 best players. No, that is absolutely ridiculous. Myles Turner is a great fit there, but you're gonna have to give up way more in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, I this says more about the imaginary puppet Pacers fan than it does, I think, the Warriors and this being an awesome trade idea. This is just what happens when your team is 5 games under 500. You just say, trade everybody. It's all a disaster. Blow it up. That's just fan behavior. That said, the Warriors have been searching for a center forever. It just feels like ever since the Andrew Bogut, Zaza Pachulia thing was over, it's been DeMarcus Cousins here. They tried Marquise Chris a few years ago, Dragon Bender. They've been going through guys who kind of like Dario Saric last season, guys who like ostensibly shoot the 3 ball, can move the pass the ball a little bit, add a little bit of size, and it just hasn't worked. Now that said, Myles Turner is obviously way more talented than none of those people that I named, even DeMarcus Cousins at the stage that he got to the Warriors. But yeah, I mean, the Pacers have been reluctant to trade Myles Turner for this long. I don't see them doing it now, especially because, yes, they're 5 games under 500. This is a team that's looking to turn things around, not blow it up. Myles Turner is central to what they want to do. Tyrese Halliburton loves playing with Myles Turner. He actually said, I never thought I would be able to play with a pick and pop big until I played with Myles Turner, and I realized how much space that provides me. And if Tyrese Halliburton is out here trying to get his season back on track, he doesn't want to take his like second banana off the team, a guy who makes the game easier for him. I don't see any of this stuff happening. But hey, Warriors fans, keep bringing up fake trades for different centers because that's what's been going on for the last decade.
Warriors keep believing, and Myles Turner keeps showing up in trade conversations. Some things will never change. Death, taxes, all of that. All right, coming up on Locked On NBA, we've got to talk about the Nuggets' wild swings this weekend and injuries. Injuries are back in vogue, unfortunately, in the NBA, and so are the Sixers' big three. They re-debuted. We'll talk about that coming up.
Oh boy, I love trash.
Here's the deal with big wireless providers. What they advertise and what you actually pay, oftentimes two very different things. Between that storefront sign and your first bill, the price tag can somehow double thanks to hidden fees and surprise charges. But with Mint Mobile, that's just not the case. They say $15 a month for a 3-month plan, and they mean it. Imagine saying goodbye to monthly bills that make your jaw drop and wondering why you've got those extra charges. Mint Mobile is premium wireless starting at just $15 a month. Every plan includes high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and it all runs on the nation's largest 5G network. Keep your current phone and bring along your numbers and contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA and cut your wireless bill up to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. More Locked On NBA coming up. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free and daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from the one, the only, Josh Lloyd. Okay, let's talk about Denver. The Nuggets are a team that contained multitudes, and it was on full display this weekend in a loss to the Wizards and then a win over the Hawks. The one constant, though, Nikola Jokic putting up absolute bonkers numbers. Here's Locked On Nuggets host Ryan Blackburn with more.
On a night where just after where Jokic called out the team, you better lead by example in those moments. You better bring it yourself. And he did. The shots that he was making were incredible. The buzzer beater from half court, because, that's just what somebody does. The pull up from 45 feet over the top of a center for nothing but the bottom. It was an incredible game. And the stretch that Jokic is on in these last two, really the last three with 27, 20, and 11 kind of sprinkled in there. Just an unbelievable stretch that we're seeing from Nikola right now, and what is an unbelievable season.
So I was listening to Locked On NBA Game Time with Wes and Swipa, the Locked On Nuggets fellow host there with Matt Moore and Ryan Blackburn, and he sounded confident that Jokic playing at this level could land him an MVP despite the team's struggles. Matt, you sounded less confident on this show. What's the lowest you think they could finish and Jokic still get the call for MVP?
I mean, look, I want to be very clear. If Jokic keeps this up, then yes, it changes the parameters. Jokic is averaging 32 points, 14 rebounds, and 10 assists on 56% from the field and 50% from three. He's currently on pace for the best BPM and PER seasons of all time. No player in NBA history dating back to 1976 over a span of any 19 games has ever had more than 600 points, more than 250 boards, more than 150 assists. No 19-game span has anyone ever done this. So it changes the parameters. If Jokic comes back down to normal God levels as opposed to super God levels, then I do think like you got to finish top 4. The history of this award says you got to finish top 3. And people will say, but Jokic in these seasons, those were outlier conditions with where the league was at, and it was coming off of COVID. There's a lot of weird stuff in those years. Now, I do think that when you got Jason Tatum and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Giannis playing at the level that they are, you are going to need to put up 50 wins and be a top 4 seed. If you do not get there, unless he keeps this level of production up, which maybe he will, I can't see him winning MVP as ridiculous as he's been. But I will say this is the best start to an NBA season in NBA modern history.
If he doesn't win MVP, even if the Nuggets are a top 6 seed, then you know who we can blame? His own teammate, Russell Westbrook, who won the MVP as a 6 seed for the Thunder the year that he averaged a triple-double. And then a couple years after that, everybody kind of had voter regret after, like, you know what? We probably should have just given it to James Harden, who was clearly the best player on the better team that season. Yep. And because Russell Westbrook won it then, I don't know that Jokic is going to be able to win it now, unless, to your point, Matt, the Nuggets are a legitimate title contending looking team by the time we're putting our ballots in. And that is probably wrong because he is far and away the best player on the planet. I think as long as the Nuggets are a top 6 seed, like, you can't be in the play-in mix. I'm okay with that. We could draw the line somewhere. But as long as they're a top 6 seed, he needs, and he's playing even at this God level, like, these 19 games still matter. It has righted the ship in Denver. Like, all this stuff is so important to what it is that Denver is building that if they do end up being a top 6 seed, it's going to be in large part because of these 19 games that Jokic has had. And so, yeah, you're probably right about the voter fatigue thing. I really hope we kind of get over it and don't like try to answer for our past sins by not giving Jokic his 4th, because I do think there's quite a bit of voter fatigue just with Jokic in general. I think that's definitely a part of it among the voter fan base. Giving him a 4th MVP was just a very rare era in the NBA. It does feel like he needs to go far and beyond what he's done in the past, but so far he's exactly doing that.
I also don't know if he's righted the ship. They lost to the Wizards.
Fair.
Well, I want to ask you about that loss in a second. But first, in Mark Stein's Sunday trade column, he wrote this about the Nuggets, quote, they are routinely described these days by league insiders as a team not only looking for trades, but eager to do something to shake things up any way they can, while also resigned to the reality that Denver's options are extremely limited. So limited options, Matt, what should be their top priority?
Begging and pleading for someone to take the Zeke Naji contract. Zeke Naji is their 5th highest paid player. Think about that. Like, he is unplayable, and he is their 5th highest paid player. I wrote about this over a Substack I run. They do not have options. No one is buying in on Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, maybe Peyton Watson, but you don't want to give up on him. You can't trade CB. Michael Porter Jr. is the one asset that you could maybe trade for multiple rotation guys, but the back injury history, he has 3 back surgeries. So who are you getting to take that contract? They don't have their picks, so they can't sweeten any deal. They've already used most of their second rounders to move off of Reggie Jackson, another deal that Calvin Booth signed. So like, they are stuck. There is really no good option. Jamal Murray can't be traded because of the extension they signed. Neither can Aaron Gordon. They are largely stuck. Their moves need to be focused on trying to navigate away an opportunity to have more flexibility this summer. That's honestly where this team is try and compete as best as you can this year, hope you get lightning in a bottle, and then try and have better flexibility this summer. That's how stuck they are with their contract situations.
I have a lightly used friend of Nikola Jokic, Vasa Micic, on the Charlotte Hornets, if you are interested. I don't know. There was some smoke around that move for Zeke Naji's contract in the offseason, so I don't know if it's something they revisit.
The itches in my comments over at Locked On Nuggets are definitely in on that idea. Those itches love them some Micic.
Well, Wes, let me ask you this. Which Nuggets team do you feel like is the real Nuggets team? Is it the one that lost to the Wizards? Is it the one that beat the Hawks? And if you say both, I'm going to digitally place a nuance hat on you that's going to look a lot like a dunce cap.
Look, it's the one that beat the Hawks, right? Because there is no real team that loses to the Wizards. Let's just start there. So given that, yeah, they're the team that can beat the Hawks. It's been hard, I think, for everybody to figure out this new world that they live in. They've had a major talent drain over these last couple of years. It's gotten to the point where Nikola Jokic has had to reluctantly score 104 points in a 48-hour span. He doesn't want to do that. And teams know that, and they're playing him straight up and daring him to do what he's been doing, and he's doing it. But, yeah, they're closer to that team I think, that beat the Hawks and the one that lost to the Wizards, just because that feels like it's an impossible standard.
They've beaten the Thunder, the Warriors, and the Mavericks, and went to overtime with the Raptors and the Nets, and then lost to the Wizards. By the way, my favorite part about this is that the Atlanta Hawks are the only team in the NBA who has both lost to the Wizards and lost to the only other team that has lost to the Wizards.
Crazy. Insane. All right, we're going to talk more about injuries around the NBA, including another injury to the New Orleans Pelicans. Are they having the most cursed season in recent NBA history? I will ask Matt Moore and Wes Goldberg that coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, and I love convenience. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On NBA ahead. Back here on Locked On NBA, it seemed like we were in a bit of an injury lull after a flurry of news to begin the season, but no more. The Magic lose another star to an oblique injury. This time it's Franz Wagner. My beautiful, scrappy Clippers have had a bad case of the day-to-days. And Brandon Ingram is out indefinitely with a low ankle sprain. Here's Locked On Pelicans host Jake Madison on Ingram's future outlook for this season and beyond.
Not coming back for minimum a month, let's say. Probably longer than that. What does it mean? My first gut feeling on this is it does feel like it could be his final game in New Orleans. I don't know if it will be, and I think there's a good chance he plays again this season, but it does have that sense of finality to it. Even if you get him on what you would call a team-friendly deal, $38 to $40 million a year, let's say, can you really sign someone who at this point looks a little injury prone to a long-term deal that is important?
Okay, Matt, do you want to be the TV doctor that comes in and somberly calls the time of death on the New Orleans Pelicans? And if the Pelicans don't sign Brandon Ingram, who do you think swoops in and takes advantage?
I feel like I'm walking into a hospital room with a skeleton in bed, and the family's like, "What can you do to save him, doctor?" And it's like,
there's nothing more I can do. Slowly pulls the sheet over the skeleton.
It was close. We almost had him. No, it's over. It's been over. It's been done. I think the real question with New Orleans is going to have to be about, can you reshape this? Is ownership going to be okay with reshaping this? And that means some really tough decisions for a team in the financial market that makes it really hard to profit. And that makes these decisions even worse. Is these rebuilding seasons in New Orleans are very tough on the pockets. Like they just really are, because the team barely scraps above profitability when they're good. So trying to figure out, like, what can you get for Zion, given his injury history? What can you get for Ingram, given the contract that he wants? You have good assets. You've got Trey Murphy and you got Herb Jones, and most teams in the league are going to want those guys, but you don't want to give up those guys. Those are the guys you want to stick around. I have no good ideas here, Wes. Like, usually I'm able to come up with something, pull a rabbit out of a hat or somewhere else, but I can't on this team. I have no idea where they go from here.
It makes having not traded Brandon Ingram when they were trying to trade Brandon Ingram look a lot worse now, because now he's hurt and it becomes that much harder to trade him. Now, he is technically an expiring contract, and a team could just trade him with no intention of re-signing him, right? Which would be a little extreme, but only if they were trying to get off some really bad long-term money, which, to your point, maybe the Pelicans don't exactly want to do that, to get an ostensibly worse player on a worse contract than they're already dealing with. This is really tough. The Pelicans do have an opportunity to reset things here, because they could just let Brandon Ingram walk away for nothing, the way that we just saw the Clippers let Paul George walk away for nothing. In today's new CBA landscape, nothing is sometimes worth more than something when you're talking about maintaining cap flexibility. And as we all know, the Zion Williamson contract, that's a get out of jail free card in that after this year. They could technically walk away from both Ingram and Zion and just sort of reset the deck completely. But to your point, Does a team in New Orleans have the cojones to kind of go out and do something that dramatic and just substantially go, yep, we looked like we could have been a contender even less than a calendar year ago, and we're just going to hit the big red button and blow this entire thing up? I don't know that New Orleans has sort of that wherewithal to do it, but it's a really intriguing option when you kind of look at the technicalities of these things.
Is this the most cursed season in your recent NBA memory, Matt?
The Pelicans have 20 players have played for the Pels already. 20 players in 20 games. However, I will note this: 33 players played for the Memphis Grizzlies last year. That is the most in any one season in NBA history. 33. There are guys that I still refuse to believe are actually real. They are just like AI generated that were running up and down the court at FedEx Center, like FedEx Forum. Like it is that was the most ridiculous injury plagued season from hell I can remember, but it's early. Pels have a chance here to get up there and maybe surpass them. All you got to do is sign 14 more guys and get them minutes. Pels, you can do it.
I would say the only difference so I saw that we had this question coming up, and I literally wrote down last year's Grizzlies. Like that was the same way I was going. And I would say the only difference between last year's Grizzlies team and this year's Pelicans team is I never bought on this Pelicans team as a real contender. Last year's Grizzlies team, they only got 9 games out of Ja Morant. That season was over before it really even started. But had they been healthy, I mean, this was a team that was second in the Western Conference the year before, looked every bit the contender, and they were moving in that right direction. Ja Morant looked like Anthony Edwards before Anthony Edwards became Anthony Edwards. Like it was going to be his league. And it all just sort of got wiped away, not just because of injuries, but a lot of the off the court stuff too. That was, I don't know if that's necessarily bad luck or not, but it's just weird stuff that was happening to that franchise. So yeah, last year's Grizzlies definitely cursed. And I don't even care if the Pelicans keep losing more players because they were never really going to contend in the West anyway this year. I just didn't think that was really in the cards for them, where the Grizzlies, you could argue, lost a year of real contention.
My favorite anecdote from this Pelican season is they signed Elfrid Payton off of the street, started him, played him. He played well. They won the game, and then they waived him.
Did he have 20 assists? Am I dreaming that? Did I have a dream about that? I thought he had like some crazy assist game before.
Crazy amount, yeah.
All right. But let's move on, though. The last time we saw the Philadelphia 76ers Big Three debut, it resulted in an embarrassing loss to a depleted Grizzlies team and a much publicized locker room meeting. We saw them all together again for the first time since then in a 108-100 win over the Bulls Sunday night. Embiid had a 31 and 12 double-double. Tyrese Maxey notched his first career triple-double. Wes, we'll start with you. Does this win do anything to convince you that the Sixers should stay the course, or do you think that they should still look at changes if they want to seriously compete in the East?
Stay the course. I mean, look, would it be shocking if this was the worst part of the Sixers season that we just got through? It feels like that's going to be the case. Like it can only go up from here, right? And that speaks more to how bad it's been. But you got your guys on the court. Finally, you need to give them a real serious look. This is their first win of their Big Three with Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey on the court. Embiid had 31 points. Maxey had a triple-double. But Paul George still has not played well. And trades and moving guys around on the roster, that's not going to help Paul George play better, right? Like for the Sixers to have a chance in the Eastern Conference to make the playoffs at all and maybe make a little bit of a push in the postseason, they need Paul George to be the guy who they signed. So no, the roster moves, they don't really matter right now. You got to get Paul George playing at that level that you expected him to play at, and then maybe you can start thinking about tinkering around the edges.
Yeah, it can only go up from here. And the things Pelicans fans have said like 18 times, and things Sixers fans have said over the years. I'm with Wes in that it's stay the course. You're not missing things with like small trades. It's not like the roster is built to play around Embiid with PG and Maxey as the supporting structure. And then you have the other guys like Kelly Oubre, et cetera, playing around Embiid. Like it's never going to make sense without Embiid. It's built to play around Joel. So without Joel, they're going to look terrible. And with Joel, they're going to look pretty good. And Maxey was phenomenal yesterday. Their entire plan here has to be, let's just win enough games in a bad Eastern Conference to make the playoffs. We show up and we're going to hope something good happens for the first time in our franchise in a very long time. So that really has to be the plan. There's no other alternative here, because if you're making trades, you're trading somebody to get a more consistent star. Like you can trade PG, but then you're trading him. You need somebody that plays most games and isn't out all that often, like James Harden. Nope, can't do that. So they just got to kind of they have to hold serve here and just kind of stay the course and hope that something good happens in the playoffs.
And certainly a hope that Embiid stays healthy. I want to read this to you and get some quick thoughts before we get out of here. This is from Tim Bontemps of ESPN. Depressing, Embiid told ESPN when asked what the past couple of months have been like for him. This is Embiid saying, quote, just trying to figure it out. There's no injury, just between the swelling. We've got to get it figured out. I've been saying it for the last few months. It's been extremely depressing. It's something that hasn't been figured out, and it's been extremely annoying because I would love to play every single game. Matt, do these comments reframe some of the actions, the behavior, the comments from Embiid to start this season?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty generous with Embiid anyway. Like, I'm pretty empathetic of him. Like, I didn't, the whole thing with the reporter in the locker room that he shoved. It talked about how, like, hey, you shouldn't do that, but also I kind of get it. And I think he's going through a lot. Injury is really depressing for an athlete. Players will talk about this a lot, that the mental side of it is a lot harder because that's your identity. Like, that's your life, is you're a basketball player. That's who you've been for a decade or more. And so it's really hard to be in a situation where you can't be that. So I'm empathetic to where Embiid is at. And, that's why I've kind of been like, I'm not going to criticize him for not playing back-to-backs. I'm not going to criticize him for the inability of him to know or say when he is or isn't going to play. It's just kind of the reality of where they're at with Joel, and that's unfortunate. But I am trying to be more empathetic towards Joel Embiid this season.
Wes?
Yeah, I don't know that I was ever really harsh on Joel Embiid, but these comments fall really flat to me. Like, okay, so like, I don't really, this is like a Monday morning quarterbacking on the stuff that you already said. Like, you said what you said before. You came out needlessly and said, I'm not going to ever play another back-to-back in my career ever again. You did kind of create controversies in that locker room when you were injured and not playing. Like, those are things that had happened, right? So like, this kind of backwards kind of reframing what happened, it doesn't work because the Sixers have a really bad record, and in part because you're not available. This is not me criticizing Joel Embiid. I just say, like, who cares about the quotes after a win that you scored 31 points in? Like, that stuff doesn't really resonate with me at all. What does kind of strike me in terms of Joel Embiid's overall attitude, though, is like his former teammate, Jimmy Butler, came into press conference last year in media day and came in as emo Jimmy. We're like doing the whole emo Joel kind of era right now because he just seems sad. And I don't know if that's funny. I don't know if it is just sad. I don't know what it is, but I know that he is just sort of wearing his heart on his sleeve more than he ever has. But he's kind of stepping in it every once in a while. And these sort of backwards half apology type of things, like revelation things, like, it just doesn't work for me.
I think it's certainly interesting because I agree with Matt that injuries are hard. There's some interesting quotes from Grant Williams. He just recently tore his ACL and starting the rehab process and knowing that, like, it's going to be a long time before you play basketball. Like, all that can be mentally challenging. But when you're Embiid and you don't really have an injury, it's just your body seems to, there's not like an injury that you can point to. It's just like your body seems to be failing you. I think that's a whole nother level of like messes with you in terms of elite athlete. So we will continue to discuss the 76ers and their quest to get things back together in the Eastern Conference. Wes, thank you so much for subbing. Hayes will be back with us tomorrow, but we appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me.
And go check out Locked On NBA, where you can hear Wes and many more of our Locked On NBA talent recapping every game every night. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. And we're going to see you right back here on Tuesday for an NBA Cup knockout preview on Locked On NBA.